I was gonna say, number one, she's gonna start writing the introduction. And number two, I would come to every county party meeting if my county party chair was this entertaining. And right with everything she said. So thank you all for letting me come and address you tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been looking forward to it. I have been running for governor for 10 months now. I have gotten to 42 out of the 83 counties in Michigan, and I'm going to get to every one of them before we're through. But I'll tell you, the thing that I'm seeing as I get around this state, and I was worried, I thought maybe we'd start to get numb to the insanity coming out of Washington, D.C. But what I'm seeing is a level of engagement that has not abated 1 ounce. Whether I am in Gogibbet County on the western end of the Upper Peninsula or I'm here in Oakland County, there are people turning out who are not just the tried and true Democrats. There are people who didn't vote in the last cycle, which it's always hard to say welcome when you want to say, where were you last year? But there are also people who voted Republican or who see Bill Schuette and want to be a part of the change that we need in this state. And I'm so encouraged by what I'm seeing as I get around Michigan. Because here's what I know. I love the state of Michigan. I am proud to be a Michigander. I have spent my whole life in this state. And I want and hope that my kids feel the same darn way. But I look around right now at the Michigan that they're growing up in, that all of our kids are growing up in, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't even resemble the one that I'm thinking about when I talk about my Michigan pride. You know, there was a point in time where people packed up their families and moved halfway around the world to Michigan because you could get a great job that paid you well enough, you could buy the car you were making, and raise your family up and retire here in this state. And right now, we've got a lot of people who haven't had a raise in 10 years, or who are working minimum wage and can't make ends meet, or who's seeing their kids continue to leave Michigan and our population shrink. We're going to lose another congressional seat because of this change that is happening in our state. But there also was a time where the finest public education you could find anywhere was a Michigan public school. And right now, after 30 years of the DeVos agenda, education's a partisan issue, and we rank 41st in our own country for 4th grade literacy. And there was a point in time that the state that put the world on wheels had the finest infrastructure around. And you know the state of our roads. But we gotta remember the state of the infrastructure underneath the ground too. Because we, the Great Lakes state, still have a city full of families that can't bathe their children with their tap water, much less give them a glass of water at the dinner table. And we deserve better. You know, this failure of leadership has hurt every one of us in this state, and we deserve better, don't you think? Yeah. All right, say something. Now, I'm no stranger to tough fights. The things that I just talked about, they are serious issues, and they are urgent issues. And I'll tell you, it's going to take an effort like none we've ever seen before to correct the course here in Michigan, but we can do it. I am not a stranger to tough fights, whether it was as the Senate Democratic leader, which Vicki so artfully told you about, or as the prosecutor in Ingham County. I never back down from a tough fight. I don't go out of my way looking for them, but I'm ready for them when they come, because I think we need people who are ready to solve problems in this state. I am tired of leaders who try to manage our expectations or give us false choices. We need leaders who are going to fight for our aspirations, who are going to return this state to the people who live in it, and who would never forget that they work for us. That's the kind of leadership I'm ready to take to Lansing. I earned a reputation for being one pain in the rear end for a governor who tried to take away collective bargaining rights. When we had to fight this governor, we didn't just stand outside with the nurses and the firefighters and the teachers who showed up to have their voices heard. I threw open the doors to the Capitol and we led the resistance from within my office. When my prosecutor had to retire, or not retire, had to resign in shame because of a scandal in Ingham County, I stepped in and took it on to restore the faith of the people of my county in our prosecutor's office. I'm ready to take this on because right now, more than ever, this 2018 election represents our best opportunity to demand the kind of Michigan that we deserve. I'm looking at what's going on in Washington, D.C. as perplexed as every one of you, as worried as every one of you, as angry as every one of you. 2018's our shot to say this is the kind of leadership we deserve in Michigan, and that we are all in this together. Now, I know a lot of people have left our state when they get their education or they leave seeking other opportunities. But when I graduated, I had made the decision myself to stay here, and I'm really glad that I did, because a fundamental part of who I am and what this is all about for me is family. I stayed in Michigan, and as a first-term legislator, I found myself a member of the sandwich generation. And I see some of you nodding, so you know what that means, but for those of you who don't, in my first term in the State House, I found myself taking care of my mother at the end of her life when she was battling brain cancer and died at the age of 59, and I was her primary caregiver. And at the same exact time, I was taking care of my daughter at the beginning of hers. I gave birth to the daughter I named after my mom 2.5 months before my mom died. And I tell you this because it didn't change my values, but it eliminated my patience. I have no patience for leaders who don't want to solve problems. I have no patience as I look at this colossal failure of government that led to 8,000 children drinking poison every day for 2 years. And I have no patience for people like our Attorney General, who continues to politicize our problems instead of digging in and fighting for the people of this state. Now, as I get around Michigan, I tell people about this household that I was raised in. My mom, who was one of Frank Kelly's top lawyers in the Attorney General's office, and my dad, who was Bill Milliken's Director of Commerce. Can you imagine the conversations we had? But I talk about that because here's the lesson that I know. Public service is important, but we as public servants can never forget that we work for the people of the state, that our motivation to solve problems and our allegiance to the people of the state is the most important part of the job, and that government is supposed to level the playing field so every one of us has a fair shot to succeed in this state. The Michigan that I know and love shouldn't be the one that doesn't make sure that our kids are literate. We need universal early childhood education in Michigan. We need to treat people who dedicate their lives to education as professionals. Yeah. My grandmother taught in Waterford Public Schools. My grandfather was a superintendent of Pontiac Public Schools. And my mom was a valedictorian when she lived in Huntington Woods. So I can tell you that education is absolutely the one thing that we as a state need to do on behalf of our children to level the playing field. But we can't stop there, because every Michigander needs a path to a high-wage job. I authored the Michigan 2020 when I was in the Michigan Senate, and had the Republicans let me pass that thing, the world wouldn't have been talking about Bernie Sanders' plan, because it wouldn't have been the Whitmer plan. The world wouldn't be talking about what happened in New York when Governor Cuomo pushed it through New York. They'd be saying that Michiganders got it right before anyone else did. We need to make sure everyone has a path to skills that get them into high-wage jobs. And I don't mean just four-year degrees, although that's a good place to start. But we need to make sure that everyone's got a real opportunity at a trade, at a skilled trade, an apprenticeship that leads to becoming a journeyman or journeywoman, and on to a career where you can make a really good living in the skilled trades, or free community college. Because you know what? There's not one path for everyone. We all should be able to pursue something that we enjoy and be able to make a living at it. And that's what government needs to do, create those paths for our people and get us in work that pays us well enough to live a good life here in Michigan. And finally, we gotta take our state from dead last on transparency and ethics. We make our state accountable, we make our leaders accountable to the people that they serve by insisting that they play by the same stinking rules everyone else does. Transparency, ethics rules, and we gotta get rid of gerrymandering in Michigan. They're not gonna let you get out. There's one in the front, one in the center, one in the back. So if you wanna sign the petition, we got them here for you. You know, Michiganders haven't had someone in their corner in a long time, and I think we deserve better. I am ready to work with everyone who wants to solve problems, and I'll take on anyone who stands in our way. Because together, I believe that we can and we will grow our economy in a way that grows our family incomes along with it. Where we are a state where every child is prepared to succeed. And at the end of the day, our leaders are looking out for the people they're supposed to be serving. We can do this, and we will do this if we do it together. I would love to have your support. I would consider you a partner in this. And once we win this election, then we will start setting the agenda and governing together. Thank you so much for having me. All right, we'll open it up for some Q&A. Bruce warned me he was going to be here and filming everything I said, so I'm not surprised. But we're going to skip him for a second. We're going to save the best for last. Yes?
All right, so I'm going to ask you the same question I asked our congressional candidate, and I'm wondering how you're going to combat the Republicans' economic message, especially if you go against Bill Schuette. It seems like he's going to be more than happy to take a victory lap on the economic recovery of Michigan the past years. So how are you going to break through that and get your economic message through and kind of put theirs aside?
I think one of the lessons of last year is how important it is that we do talk about the economic message, that we talk about a plan and a path for everyone in this state to get into a high wage skill. You know, they're out there to say we want jobs. They got no plan for what that means. And unfortunately, I think as Democrats, we haven't owned that space where we should have, because this is the party that created opportunity for people. This is the party that knows that education is what levels the playing field. His is the party that's stealing money out of traditional public schools and funneling it to for-profit charter schools. His is the party that picks winners and losers. And if you happen to be one of their friends, you get special treatment under the law, and everyone else has to pay for it. I think that I'm eager to take them on every one of these issues, especially the economic message. I think it's also important that we talk about making this a place where entrepreneurs have access to capital and can grow small businesses. Why Democrats don't talk about small business more, I don't know, but we're not gonna, exclude business people from this conversation, because there's a lot of small business growth that is driving our economy and putting people to work. So I think that that's a space that we need to get real comfortable in talking about as well. But I really believe that if we're gonna move our economy forward in a way that means we move forward along with it, we've gotta have a concentration of talent. And that starts with getting people real paths to skills and degrees that they need to be successful. Yeah. Yes?
I like your passion, and you said some things mixed with other things that are not so passionate tonight. I like that, and my fear is that we're gonna have another candidate that is going to be like the Tom Perez messages that I get from the mail all the time that are a long list of empty statements. I want somebody that will take the passion that they have and describe what they're going to do in very concrete terms. How is it going to affect that one person that's sitting in that audience, or that one person that's watching you on television or at a rally? How can they absorb the feeling that you really are talking about them, and not just that emptiness that exists far too much in the Democratic candidates, as far as I'm concerned?
Well, all of them, right? I mean, it's broad strokes, it's
Well,
40,000
it's a
foot.
given that the Republicans all have empty messages.
Right. So, well, here's one of the things that I think is a real truth that we're starting to appreciate from the last couple of elections in Michigan. You know, Democrats haven't played the short game or the long game very well in Michigan in a long, long time. But you know what? There's so much science and savvy that goes into a successful campaign. Well, you know what? Showing up is half the battle. Engaging with people, getting into every community across the state. Now, I gotta run statewide, and I am gonna get into every single county. I've been to 42. Heck, I went to the UP in February. 11 counties too, by the way. I got 4 to knock off my list. But the point is that what keeps me sharp and focused on the things that really matter are the conversations that I have with people sitting at their kitchen table or taking a walk. I do walks with Whitmer, you know, and we walk and we talk about issues. You know, it's the teacher from Alpena who has one child and she's paid so little as a public school teacher, she qualifies for the bridge card. That's who I'm fighting for. And I think that it's those pieces of the education that inform the platform, but that also tell me how we talk about it, how we engage people, how we make it personal. Because this election couldn't be more personal. What happens in 2018 is gonna change the whole trajectory of this state for probably a lot of the rest of our lifetimes in this room. And that's why we gotta get it right, and it comes from the people of the state. And I think you're making a good point that I think about all the time, about how do I make sure what I'm saying really speaks to the person, that this is personal, this is about you. And if we win this election, what we accomplish is going to help you, you know, get over the hurdles that are keeping you from getting, you know, living the life you want to. Yeah. Sure.
So I'm not originally from Michigan. I moved here a few years ago, and I absolutely love it here. But I think that the messages that really stick with people are the ones that inspire. And you spoke very glowingly about the state, and I think that's awesome. What would you say Michigan's brand is, and how would you use that as part of your campaign pitch to Greater Michigan as a whole?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that I have got a thoughtful answer for you, but I'll tell you off the cuff. Michigan is such a unique state, right? The most wonderful thing about this state, though, are the people that live in it. People who work hard, who are polite, generally speaking. Yes, we've got our exceptions to the rule, but people who are tough. You know, we're not made of sugar. We go out in all 4 seasons that we have here in Michigan. Well, you know, we're known for our water. And the sad truth about all of the mismanagement and screw up that has happened in our state has really compromised what I think was a solid, fantastic brand. We're a laughing stock when it comes to water management because we have a city full of people that can't drink their water, but also for a lot of other reasons. You know, I talk about water all the time. It defines our borders, but it also defines who, you know, our psyche here in Michigan. And because we are stewards to 20% of the world's fresh water in and around our borders, we've taken it for granted. And when I say we, I obviously don't mean people in this room, but water has been taken for granted in Michigan, and we don't have real oversight. We don't have meaningful strides in water management. You know, we've got brains, we've got research universities, and we got water. We should be world leaders on water policy. We shouldn't have pipelines underneath the Great Lakes. We shouldn't have companies that pull as much water out of the We shouldn't have algae blooms across the state, and we shouldn't have people who lose access to water because they can't pay for it. We need to create a Department of the Great Lakes and Water and own that brand and fix Flint, get oil out from underneath the Great Lakes, and have real oversight on companies that continue to withdraw as much water out of our ground as they want.
It's January 29th. elected and you're facing a legislature that's much like the legislature is not. Because face it, we're gonna have gerrymandered districts on the ballot in 2018 and our chances are not good. I would like to know how you plan to work with the legislature to accomplish things and how you would differentiate yourself from the other primary candidates in that regard.
Well, thank you for the question. I think it's an important one that you raised. So, this is what I was alluding to when I talked about that. We haven't played the short game or the long game very well in a long time. So, the short game is running the tables in 2018, and that means winning the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and the secretary of state's office. And by God, maybe taking back the state house. But it's hard. We can definitely win those top 3 seats. I mean, I'm laying claim that we are gonna run the tables on those 3. We can level a lot of barriers to voting when we do. You got a governor who is absolutely committed to it. You got a secretary of state who knows what they're doing, and an attorney general who's gonna back them both up. We can level a lot of barriers to voting in Michigan. However, the long game is gerrymandering, getting rid of gerrymandering. When I took my oath of office as the ranking Democrat, as the Democratic leader in the state Senate, that election, if you added up all the votes cast for Republicans for the Senate and all the votes cast for Democrats for the Senate, it was about 50-50. So when I took my oath of office, I should have been the leader of 19 tie in the Senate. I was the leader of 12. The Republicans had a super majority because they've so gerrymandered the districts. When the only election that matters is the Republican primary, it changes the whole agenda that we all have to abide by from a small group of people that decide a Republican primary. So I know what gerrymandering has meant, and I can tell you that we've got to take the ability to draw districts away from the legislature, and that's what this voters, not politicians, is doing. I think that's the long game. But January 1st, 2019, it will be a Republican Senate. Very likely. I mean, unless I don't know that there's any scenario that it doesn't remain Republican Senate. And that's why my experience is even that much more important. Because I'll tell you, we're hiring someone to run state government. And by God, we gotta have someone who can walk in there on day one and get things done. That's the benefit of having served in the legislature. I understand how to work with a term limited legislature. I understand where the levers of power are in the executive office, and I got the backbone to make sure that we use them every opportunity we get to make our agenda a reality for the people in the state. That means using the budget, that means negotiating, and sometimes, yeah, that means running right over the legislature when you have to. I co-chaired the stem cell campaign when we amended our constitution to permit embryonic stem cell in Michigan. I kept introducing that legislation over and over again. Andy Meisner did too. He was the one in the House that introduced it. We couldn't get it done, so we went around the legislature and went straight to the people. And sometimes you gotta do that. But having a governor who understands that makes all the difference in the world. The outsider argument, I understand, is appealing, but I hope after 7 years of Rick Snyder and 10 months of Donald Trump, we understand that experience is important.
From the very moment Trump took office, he asked the question, how can I keep out Muslims? And how can I keep out Hispanic, Mexicans? On many levels, many African Americans and people of color feel the same way at the state level. We just don't feel like people are hearing us. How do you hope to regain that trust and not make it feel like it's just another song that's being sung?
Yeah. Well, I think it's relationship building. I really do. You know, I'm very proud that this morning, Warren Evans, Benny Napoleon, and Kim Worthy endorsed me this morning. I'm really proud of them. I'm proud that when I was in the legislature, I was the leader of a caucus that was 50% African American. I think that the work that I've done over my career tells who I am and what I value, but ultimately going forward, it's gonna be absolutely essential, especially when you got state police colonels doing the kind of junk that she put on her Facebook post, how much more important it is that people who have that platform use it every single day to embrace the values that we are running on. That means day one, the day after the election, long before we descend on Lansing on January 1st, 2019. That means in November, right after the election, I have to start building a cabinet, thinking about appointment process, thinking about what that looks like. And it is gonna be reflective of the great diversity of this state. It's gonna be filled with people who are experts in the area that they're supposed to oversee, and that they are reflective of the diversity of this state. Those are important things to me, but not just because they're important, because it makes us better decision makers. If there was a person from Flint or a person of color around the table when they were deciding to use the Flint River as their source of water, it never would have happened. But they didn't have that, and dangerous, decisions were made that have hurt children. I mean, it's real. The need for diversity at all tables of power, whether it's in a boardroom or it's in the state capitol, is crucial to making decisions that help the population of this state get ahead. And that's something I've always been committed to, and you've got my word that I will continue to be. When Donald Trump said, his Muslim ban came out, I was one of the first people to say, we've got to take a stand against this craziness coming out of Washington, D.C. Some governors did just that. Ours didn't. He was quiet. And just that silence sends a message to people that they should be fearful, because their state governor's not looking out for them. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities that come with the office of governor to accomplish our goals, and those are a few of the ways that I plan to go about them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
Hello again. I met you in Pontiac.
Where did we meet in Pontiac? Tell everybody.
We met at Daniel Whitmer
Yes, say it. Say it.
Auditorium, which is your grandfather.
Thank you.
And I wear a lot of hats. And good to say, I think I'm effective in all of them. I make a difference. Mental health. The governor's budget, Snyder, if I'm not be mistaken, was around 750 million. And for mental health, approximately 35 million. Now, we all know that in the state of Michigan, with the counties and the cities have a tremendous amount of mentally ill individuals walking the street. That 46 million approximately is a drop in the bucket. And when you live in a county in Oakland, as I do, where the mentally ill have recidivism as far as being arrested on the street, back in jail. In fact, in my last studies, I did uncover maybe a dozen individuals who have been to jail over 30 times. It's not 2018 yet. It gives, something is wrong with this picture and how rephrase. What is your insight, or what plans are you thinking in terms of addressing this very serious? By the way, 30 years of military also I have. So between the military, the state and federal government, I have over 50 years. So it's not too much anyone can get by me. I do a lot of research and development. So what's your insight? What is your position on the mental ill being appropriately taken care of?
Well, thank you for your question. It's nice to see you again. We've met at the Dana P. Whitmer Resource Center, which is in Pontiac, something named after my grandfather, who was superintendent I mentioned earlier. And you do wear a lot of hats, and is that your hat right behind you, literally?
Yeah, that's one of 50.
All right. Well, I appreciate your question. Mental health is an issue that comes up everywhere we go, and it comes up because we're doing a lousy job taking care of people that have mental health, issues. And we all know people that have mental health issues, whether it's a family member like I have, who suffers from depression, or it's schizophrenia, or a variety of issues. We're doing a lousy job because when John Engler was governor, he closed down the mental health institution and left people without any resources, left people without any support, and they confront in the worst ways to treat people, right? And when I was the prosecutor in Ingham County, I did a ride-along with the Lansing Police Department 4 days in. And our shift was, I think, like 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. And the first call that we got was an Iraq war vet, Purple Heart, who was distraught and driving around and had a lot of weapons in his car. And we caught up with him. And this is a man who served his country, who had real PTSD and a lot of different issues going on. And the only question that the police officers could ask was, do we take him to jail or to a hospital? There's not, an emergency room, because there's not a place for someone who really has a mental health crisis to go to get help so that they can be a productive person in our society again. And one of the things that I think is one of the toughest issues as a legislator, and Vicki would attest to this, is when there's a vote that you don't do enough. And I'm thinking about the autism, coverage that passed. That was a prime opportunity to pass mental health parity in Michigan, to help so many people across the state. And the Lieutenant Governor, I'm glad that we made a stride in terms of, the autism community, but we really missed an opportunity to cover all sorts of mental health issues that people are confronting in our state. And I think that's really what separates Democrats and Republicans, is that we think about everybody, right? We're worried about solving problems for everybody. And I think mental health is one of those that we got a lot of work to do on. It is related to the opioid crisis. It is related to addiction issues. It is related to people coming back from serving their country. We've got a lot of reasons that this is something that we've got to tackle. And so as I think about how do we create state government in a way that really does meet the needs of the people who live in this state, it's time for us to talk about public health again in a way that includes mental health as a part of that solution.
Okay, your last question, it's Bruce Bell.
Okay, Bruce,
So,
make it a doozy, will ya?
well, so for some reason, we're still talking about healthcare in this country. And I've read Dr. Elsa's Facebook or website, I've read yours. So your position seems to be, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, so that we just need to maintain the status quo and just keep what we have in place. Dr. Said seems to be saying we need to have a public insurance option. So if I'm wrong, please correct me. And how would you improve the healthcare system in the state of Michigan once you go?
So obviously, my website says nowhere on it that the status quo is good enough on any measure in Michigan. Number two, when Vicki introduced me, she told you about my commitment to healthcare, because I'm the one that went straight to the table when our Republican governor embraced Obamacare, which no one in the world thought that it would happen, but he did. And I went to the table and negotiated the terms of it, put the votes together, and made sure that it's a reality. And 630,000 Michiganders have coverage now who didn't before, and our economy's been well improved. But we got more work to do. And I think that the whole conversation around healthcare that's happening right now in our country has been about whether or not we pull the rug out of the people that I just described or not. It's not really been about how do we increase coverage so that everyone has access to affordable healthcare. And that's got to be the conversation that we're having in Michigan. Obviously, there are different plans being introduced on the federal side. And my first and only question is, how is it going to help people in Michigan? How does it impact us in Michigan? Is there a real plan? I think we need leadership in this state that stakes out a Michigan health plan, that there's an opportunity under the Affordable Care Act to expand access to affordable health care, but we gotta create it as a state. They're moving forward with something like that in New York, and that's something that we're looking at, because I am committed to making sure that every person in Michigan has access to affordable health care. all for your time tonight. Thank you for staying so active in Democratic politics. 13 months out, to have a room filled like this is really exciting. And if you want to get involved in the campaign, I would love to work with you. We are collecting signatures so that I qualify for the ballot. I want to make sure that we've got the requisite number. I need 15,000 to qualify. We can turn in up to 30,000, which we are going to do, which means we're going to collect about 42,000. And if you want to help on that front, we'd appreciate it, because we know that Bill Schuette is going to examine every one of those to make sure they're legit. Also, we are obviously doing a lot of speaking events. If you want to get connected with us through social media and help broadcast our message to your network, it would be really helpful. If you want to host an event, we'd love to work with you in doing that, and I'm eager to continue growing my network in Southeast Michigan in particular. I'm spending a lot of time in Oakland County and Wayne County and Macomb County. So if you've got a network that you're willing to introduce me to or even host an event for, I would love to work with you on that. And I just left something, a woman said, maybe we're gonna start doing Wine Wednesdays for Whitmer. And get friends together and take on an activity that helps the campaign. I'm all for it. And if I could partake, I would. Thank you so much.